Is this running? Yeah? Okay. This is the first in a series of interviews being conducted in regard to case file 275-A23, classified restricted. Interview performed by Agent Smith, badge number 6382743. I'm here with Dr. Elizabeth Hale, head of laboratories on Project Minesweeper. Dr. Hale. Dr. Hale?
Yes.
Dr. Hale, are you able to carry on with this interview?
Yes, I'm sorry.
All right, Doctor, can you please state for the record what you and Dr. Sadler were working on?
Elizabeth and I were working together on developing NanoDiptych, currently in use in oncological practice as a means to treat those with brain damage and mental disabilities normally treated with conventional surgical procedures.
Could you elaborate on that a bit more for the layman?
You know nanotech, right? Microscopic robots? We use them in cancer treatments to assist in the breaking down and removal of cancerous cells. As it stands now, that's all they're used for. Well, that and breaking down blood clots.
Why?
Well, until now, nanobots were only capable of destroying cells. I originally thought it might be possible to use them for weight loss, but when I tested them on mice, it turned out that the bots were unable to identify the difference between unwanted and desirable fatty tissue. The mice were, well...
Eaten alive?
I was going to say caustically digested, but I suppose it's the same thing.
So what happened after that?
Well, it occurred to me that nanobots were essentially microtransmitters. They have to be in order to coordinate, and that they could be reprogrammed and adapted to carry signals and small charges. So I contacted Sadler.
I'm a specialist in oncology and neurosurgery, brain surgery. I guess you could say I'm a double threat. Hale wanted a consultation on a project. I couldn't imagine what. She's a well-known microengineer, and remembering her work in nano-oncology, I was anxious to find out what.
And that was something to do with robots in the brain?
Yes, she approached me with a plan to produce a type of nanobot that would not only break down damaged brain tissue, but would also rebuild electrical signals in the brain using the bots themselves.
You're saying you cured brain damage?
Not yet, but we could do it.
It was theory, of course, but trials were going well, and several major investors were expressing interest in our findings.
Where were your experiments at when the incident on January 4th occurred?
We were in late animal testing. We already had performed dozens of successful reconstructions in canine brains and had moved in 3 former cancer patients to test the effects on muscle tissue.
People?
Subjects.
They were volunteers. Former patients of mine that I convinced to join the project.
Friends?
Yes.
And you injected them with the upgraded nanobots?
I didn't... Yes.
They were to coordinate with the older model. We programmed the bots to travel no further than the limb we were testing. On the 4th, we were testing on leg tissue, sending electrical impulses down the leg and making toes flex.
How did things get out of your control?
It didn't. We were in control. Someone sabotaged us.
How?
A virus.
The bots just lost it. They headed to the brain like we wanted them to eventually, but it was too early.
What?
They ripped the brain of our first patient to shreds. He began convulsing and he
what? He died?
Not right away. First, he bled from the ears and eyes. He was shaking so bad he was spattering blood everywhere. We had to seal the room so he wouldn't infect anybody else. We didn't know if the bots could differentiate between bodies.
You left him to die?
No!
Yes, he was already dead. A virus overran the programming. From there, the 2 models coordinated and resumed their primary function. The newer model identified the brain tissue. The older model destroyed it.
Like the lab rats?
Mice.
These are not mice, Dr. Hale. These are people.
You seem to be under the impression I'm unaware of that.
You said one patient was infected.
Yes.
3 bodies were sent to be cremated?
That was the first patient. When he died, I don't know how to explain it.
I would suggest you try.
He started screaming.
Like I said, the bots are microtransmitters. After he died, they linked together and turned the patient into a human antenna. It may have appeared like a scream, but in reality, it was a signal.
A signal to who?
Whom? The other patients.
You're telling me he transmitted the virus through a screen?
A binary signal, yes.
And where were you during all this?
I ran for the safe room switch.
You sealed everyone in?
We didn't want any cross-contamination with other nanobots. Elizabeth and I made sure that none of the other staff had ever formerly received treatment, so they were clean and safe.
And you were unconcerned that any of you, many of your own former staff members, might have been exposed during your 5-year run in the nano-oncology program?
This was dangerous. It could have killed anyone with nanotech who came within transmission distance.
How did this happen?
Did I not just explain that?
I mean, how did the virus get into the lab?
The janitor.
What?
We have smart tables in the lab. We use them because they're large enough to draft up blueprints in real time, and they're programmed to coordinate with any wireless device that's placed on them. Any updates or refinements to the models can be made simply by laying a laptop or a smartphone on the table. We have no outside connection to the lab server, so that is the only way to bring in digital information.
I can barely start my home computer. When Liz told me about the table, it made me nervous. I banned my team from bringing any outside devices. I even installed an old wall phone for outside calls. Hale told me I was being paranoid, but I wanted to be sure. I didn't know what could happen.
It says here you hired Samuel Mays.
Sammy? Yeah, he was a janitor at my old hospital. Why?
Hale claims he was responsible for the virus.
What?
The janitor took out his phone and put it on the table. He pretended to receive a text message, but I could see that it was blank from where I stood.
Why didn't you kick him out?
I was going to, but when I moved in his direction, he dropped the phone on the table. He quickly picked it up and apologized as if it was an accident, then left.
You didn't think to check your system?
I did. After he was gone, I checked the log to see if any files had moved themselves onto our server, like a game app or an email exchange. I didn't notice anything of the ordinary, so I dismissed it. I assumed there just simply hadn't been enough time for a sync.
You didn't look for viruses?
Would you?
I'm afraid, Dr. Sadler, that you are in a great deal of trouble. I have here a warrant for your arrest and a stack of charges: willful negligence, manslaughter, conspiracy.
What? But what did I do? I was only responsible for coordinating medical information that Dr. Hale used.
You chose the victims.
I knew their medical history. They were my friends.
You hired the janitor responsible for transmitting the virus.
I've known Sammy since we were kids.
Which makes us question your own motivations.
But I didn't.
What happened to the remaining nanobots?
We destroyed them. They'd been compromised.
That's unfortunate. And the programming data?
Still in the server, locked down with the rest of the lab.
Can you take a look at this, please?
What is this? Am I being arrested?
No, you're being drafted.
I beg your pardon?
I can't believe this. I was only trying to help. We could have made the lives of millions of people better.
Your neglect led to the deaths of 3 people and the dangerous compromise of an indispensable medical treatment. Did you really think this was the kind of thing you can walk away from without consequence?
I tried. I kept phones out of the labs. I had a landline installed. I was careful.
It's not the technology you misunderstood, Dr. Sadler. It was human nature you failed to account for.
But I wanted to help.
Well,
I'm not in the habit of working for the military, or... Where did you say you were from again?
that doesn't matter. Rest assured, we have the best interest of the nation in mind. I think you'll find the salary reasonable.
Very. But that is hardly the point. I hold the rights and blueprints to all current medical nanotechnology. Do you think a few zeros make any difference to me one way or another?
I suppose not. But I may point out that your technology just murdered your test subjects. That is a government concern. Your research, as of 600 hours this morning, has just been confiscated as evidence and is property of, well, my branch. Now, I could have locked you away for a very long time, like Dr. Sadler, never to lay your hands on so much as a screwdriver again. Or you could work for me and have access to equipment you've only imagined. What would you say to that?
When do I begin?